Brewing Network.
My name's Justin Crosley. I'm with the Brewing Network. I'm lucky enough to get to do this every year because Matt invites me. I've been coming here since the first Firestone Walker Fest. I missed 1 year, and I'm told that the interviews didn't go well while I was gone. I heard it was a mess.
It was a mess.
So I'm happy to be back. And we're going to talk today. Well, this is the hard part for me, so I'm just going to be honest for a second. I presented this panel to Firestone where I wanted to talk about breweries being acquired or mergered, because obviously that's happened to Firestone. And I thought that they would just, tell me to fuck off or whatever, but actually they liked the idea. The hard part for me, though, is, so I don't mind mergers and acquisitions and the stuff that's happening in the beer world as long as the beer is still good. I really don't. What I do mind is it's such a sensitive subject. Like, I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know even what the right words are to use. I don't know if I'm allowed to say consolidation, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say acquired, and I don't know if... It's such a weird... Like, remember before all this happened? We just talked about everything. We just talked about beer and business, and it was no big deal. And then now that this stuff happens, sometimes I feel like I have to tiptoe around, and I know you feel the same because you're fans of these breweries, and then you're not exactly sure what happened, and are you still allowed to be a fan? And that's the only stuff that makes me uncomfortable about it. So I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about that. Some of that is an apology that if I said the wrong word, like if I'm supposed to use merger and the right word was acquisition, I don't know, fuck you. I'm trying to get it right.
Partnership.
Partnership. Okay, partnership. So that's an apology in advance if I use the wrong terms. And you can ask questions too. We got a microphone up here, so you can do that. And we're just going to try to get to the bottom of this, but mostly what we're focusing on is the beer. We don't really have the owners of the breweries up here. What we have is the brewmasters. And it's pretty important what happens in the brew house. That's the stuff that I care about. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Hopefully, Wayne from Cigar City, that's one of the newer partnerships that just happened with Oscar Blues, I think. Hopefully he's going to come up here too. Even if he doesn't, we have his beer. So that's good enough for me. All right. So right to my left, we have Matt Brynildson from Firestone Walker Brewing Company, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. One of the guys behind this great festival. And there he is. I knew he'd make it eventually. You just have to ridicule him enough. This is Wayne from Cigar City. He's coming up on the far left. And right in the middle, we have Adam Schmidt from Founders Brewing Company. Yeah. All making great beer, which should be making its way to your glass. Shannon, please don't forget to pour us beer up here because we're very thirsty and most of us are drunks. And by most of us, I mean me. Thanks, Shannon. What are we drinking from Firestone Walker right now? Do you know, Matt? Do you know, Shannon?
I don't.
I bet I can pick it out. I wonder if I can pick it out before Matt. It's Pivo Pils. I didn't even taste it. I just smelled it. I want to know if I'm right, though. He's going to be like, no, it's Double Jack.
I don't know. They told me a lot of things.
I said Pivo.
Yeah.
Did I get it right? Okay. It's Pivo Pils, ladies and gentlemen. That's what's in your glass. Why don't we start, since this is we're still going to talk about beer, not just all of the partnerships. So tell us about Pivo Pils.
So Pivo Pils, I can't remember now. I think we've been brewing Pivo for 3 or 4 years, maybe four years. It was actually inspired by one of the brewers that's here at the festival, Birrificio Italiano.
Oh, yeah.
And Agostino, the brewer there, is in many ways kind of the Charlie Papazian or maybe the Fritz Maytag of the Italian beer kind of craft beer revolution. I met Ago many years ago, and he poured me his Tipo Pils, which is a dry hop Pilsner, and he goes into the Tettnang region of Germany every year and hand selects the hops, and there's nothing outside of the style. It's just a classic Pilsner beer that is actually dry hopped and hop forward, and I tasted it, and it just the light switch flicked on for me, and I decided from that point I needed to study, learn, and figure out how to make a beer like Tipo Pils. And Pivo is just that. It's a hoppy, classic Pilsner beer that's dry hopped. It's been a real joy for me because I don't want to say that we started the trend, but I feel like we were on the forefront of a trend back to sessionable, beautiful Pilsner beer in the craft community here, and it gives me kind of a warm fuzzy to see a lot of people now coining this phrase of hoppy Pilsner, and I feel like we've kind of created this new style of Pilsner that, again, it's still really drinkable, but it's just hop forward, and it's kind of American twist on the style.
Yeah. I think you're right about Pilsners coming back, too. I was able to walk around the fest, and a lot of the brewers brought Pilsners this year, which I love. I just went on like a Pilsner tour before this panel. Wayne, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I also wanted to say Augustino is very passionate about what he does as well. If you were here for his interview a few years ago, you would definitely know that. I think he's amazing.
His beer is being poured in the large tent, the farthest one from us. So if you want to try Beer Officio, it's over there, and they're pouring some good stuff. All right, let's get to some of these things. So one of the things that we're told as consumers is that breweries that are growing, like yours have been, is that you need more resources, and one of the ways to do that is to merge or partner or even be acquired by larger breweries with more resources. So I want to know what that means for me now. Like, now you guys have more resources, and what's happening in the brew house that you could point to me that has been a change for you, that kind of goes along with this story that I've been told. And maybe we'll start with Matt, because, in fact, Matt, you guys merged with Duvel how long ago now?
It hasn't been a year. It was in the summer of 2015.
Okay. And then Founders, how long ago, and with who?
We're partners with Mau San Miguel in Spain.
Okay.
And I think it's been almost 3 years now.
Almost 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And Wayne, this one's just recently, and with Oscar Blues, is that right?
Yes, Oscar. Well, it's Fireman's Capital or Fireman's Equity. So underneath that umbrella is OB, which is the highest producing brewery underneath the umbrella at 190,000 annual last year, and then we're second at about 60 to 65,000 combined annual last year, and then you also have Perrin, and you have Wasatch and Squatters.
Okay. All right. So a lot of what we hear about is distribution and expanded that, but I want to know about the brew house. So what happens? You got a wad of cash now in your brew house, Matt. What happens?
So I think every brewery is going to have a different story and why and where the transition happened. For Adam and David, they put this thing together independently, and really it was financed out of their own pockets, and it was built very organically. And in the beginning, it was very easy to finance a new fermenter here out of the checkbook or take a loan out to make the next step. But as you grow and as you make that commitment to grow, you realize that we're 550 employee company. There's 105 employees just on the production side of the business. We have 3 restaurants, and now we have a commitment to keeping all those families and our employees, but maybe most importantly, the culture and everything surrounding the brewery, and that takes a lot of money to move forward. And every brewery has a different point, but we hit about the 300,000 barrel mark, and the next series of investments was going to be $20 million chunks over the next 3 to 4 years. And I think Adam and David looked at each other and they're like, wow, we've gotten it this far and we've done it independently. Somehow, some way, we made our way into the big leagues of brewing.
Yeah.
You kind of wake up one day and you're like, whoa, this is real, man. And we've got a lot of people depending on us. So why not bring on, instead of a banking partner, why don't we bring on a brewing brewing partner? Why don't we bring on somebody who has 100+ years of experience at this game? It's a legacy piece. We want the brand to continue. We want the family name to be out there, and we've got something live here. So we chose a brewing partner. And actually, Duvel Margaux makes less beer than Sierra Nevada Brewing Company.
Do they really?
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about another family, 100% family-owned company that has focused on craft as we know it in Belgium. Duvel is the Sierra Nevada of Belgium in many ways.
Yeah.
And so honestly, the fact that they would even consider partnering with us, I mean, it was a pinch me moment for me. It was like, are you kidding me? I'm going to get to make beer with Hedwig Neven, who is one of my idols. When I was a home brewer, it was like, Duvel, if I could make that beer, and now this guy wants to make beer with me. So from the brewing staff side, it was a no-brainer. It's like, really? This is going to happen? I think from the financial side and everything, it just was this perfect partnership. No one's pulling each other any which direction. Everybody respects what they do.
Has he been to your brew house?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Were you all nervous? Like, did you shine everything really
hell
bright?
Yeah. But it was a proud moment for me because I met Hedwig in 2001 was the first time I toured his brewery. I met him the year prior, judging World Beer Cup, and we hit it off. He invited me to tour his brewery in 2001, and he gave me a tin, a Duvel tin. And in my office, I have no swag from any other brewery except this one Duvel tin.
Nice.
And I got to walk him in my office, and I'm like, dude, that's been hanging there since 2001.
That's the only thing. He's like, you should probably hang other things. It's fine. Your office is boring. Have you gone and brewed at the Duvel facility yet?
No, I've been there a few times, more just getting to know each other. We've talked about collaboration, but the other piece of this is that Duvel Margaux had partnered with first Ommegang on the East Coast. That was many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And then in the last 3 years with Boulevard. And, the brewmaster of Boulevard, Stephen Powell, who's here, again, a close friend, somebody that I've been hanging with, somebody I've admired for many years. And guess what? Now I get to brew with that guy. and that's more about what this partnership is going to mean, is actually more of the interactions between Boulevard Brewing Company and Firestone Walker. So Stephen and I talk on a weekly basis. We share ideas. I've already learned a ton that I think we can apply in our brewery. Hopefully he's picked up some things and there's some synergies there. But in no way is it a heavy-handed relationship. There's no Belgians living in Paso Robles.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah. And... and the ability. I mean, I think that the long-term concept is that rather than we build a brewery somewhere in the Midwest or the East Coast, there'll be some synergies where we can utilize some capacity in Kansas City with Boulevard Brewing Company, and likewise they can make some beer on the West Coast, and we can actually provide fresher beer for those markets.
Okay.
In this day, we sell 80% of our beer in California. They sell 80% of their beer in the Midwest. So, that synergy has yet to be realized. But that's the long-term hope there.
And what about fresh Firestone beer in Europe? I mean, is that a thing you could do at their brewery in Belgium as well?
It's interesting. They have great distribution channels in Europe, and we would love to get in that.
Yeah.
It just takes time.
Yeah.
And so, I think that could happen. I think that would be the best way for it to happen.
Because if I could have a Pale 31 everywhere I go on Earth, I'd be happy. I'm like the McDonald's of beer drinkers.
These beers are super fragile. We know that. We know we can't just shotgun these beers all over the world, and so that's a piece of the puzzle. Yeah.
Okay, Adam, what about you? Talk to me about Founders and what it means for the beer to you guys.
So our organic growth was a lot faster than Firestone's was. So I started in the brewery in 2008, and I believe that year we produced 9,000 barrels, and this year we're going to produce 350,000 barrels.
Wow. Okay.
But all of that has come from either opening new markets, but most of it, is organic growth, mainly associated with all the IPA most recently, and that's what's driven our most recent expansion. And like Matt said, once you get to that size, you can go to a bank, but you can't have a bunch of loans out already on tanks and a brew house you just put in, and then you want to put in a 300-barrel brew house, and they go, well, what do you have against it, or anything like that. So it's very helpful to have a company as large as Mao San Miguel is to to kind of have our back, and anything we need, I guess we could utilize monetarily, but just to have them there as a backing is very, I guess, crucial for that growth.
So this kind of a theme on this panel, and something I've heard too, is that the kind of getting to 300,000 barrels, which by the way is a big deal and an expensive deal. That's not a small amount of beer. But the next growth is exponential. Anything from there is just such a major leap. And Wayne, so Cigar City also had really fast growth. I remember interviewing you maybe even in your first year. And how many barrels are you guys at now?
2009 was our first year of production, and we started in March, and we're around 1,000 barrels of production. And 2015 ended up with about 60 to 65,000 barrels. So yeah, a really big growth. And some of the things that both these guys are saying are pretty much the same reasons why we've gone through the same relationship or change of business. It's basically the fact that am I crazy enough to sign on the dotted line for $25 million plus? And while I don't disagree with you, that can take place before 300,000 barrels, as you can see from our situation. So we have a facility that we maxed out in a very short period of time, at least from our perspective. And and it's. Do you want to sign on the dotted line, or do you want to be in a situation to where you can sit on a board and help make decisions and be underneath an umbrella? That another thing about our relationship too is the fact that of course the other option would have been, in my opinion, detrimental. It would have been absolutely just terrible in the worst way possible, in my opinion. So I'm very happy about the direction that we went, because I think that at least we're in a situation where we're underneath an umbrella with a bunch of other craft breweries, and not in a situation to where we're regulated by a massive overlord.
Sure. Okay. So it sounds like you guys have gotten past that, initial shock and the portion of it. But I do want to ask this question. I'm sorry to ask it, but you're brewmasters, so I'm thinking about you in the brew house. When word comes down, hey guys, so we just sold or partnered or whatever it was, before you got all the details and found out that it was with these good companies, did you have an oh shit moment? Like, were you worried that something might change in your brew house? I mean, even if it was just initially, like, what are you doing to my brew house? It's mine. I built it, and this is my beer. Did any of you have a moment like that you were concerned?
I mean, like Wayne was saying, I think that you worry when you find out that, we're going to explore this option of partnering, and how we take the next steps. And yeah, you worry, oh gosh, is my check going to be signed by the king of beers or whatever? And you're like, man, all right, better spruce up the resume. No, I'm just kidding. But, and so in our case, it was a pretty open and honest conversation amongst the partners, just saying, hey, we don't have to do this, but we have some opportunities. Craft valuation has never been like this before. Yeah. And it's at the time when we need the help the most. So, what do you think? Let's, whiteboard at Dream Committee, what would be the best possible situation here? And for us, it was the Duvel Morgott situation. It was like to pair up with another craft brewer who's been through all these cycles and has the brain trust to take it to the next level and to help us in the areas where we haven't developed the business. So actually, it was a pretty easy sell to the staff. We got everyone together and we had a meeting, and it was more of a celebration than anything, because almost everybody in our organization respected that brewery. Sure. And knew about that brewery. And of course, there's some, there's that, oh gosh, what's going to change? And it just takes time. You got to prove it to everybody that, hey, this is about just moving forward and doing the right thing. You got to trust leadership. We felt like we built a seriously strong and an important culture internally amongst our brewing staff, our production staff, everybody, our sales staff, and that, there's a lot of trust there. And now that it's gone 6 months or more, I think everybody's kind of back to business as usual.
Everybody's cool. Okay. Do we pour the Founders beer yet? Is that out there? No? You all showing me your empty glasses or your full glasses? I can't see. You got it. What was the founder's beer that we poured? Do you know, Adam?
We have Rubaeus and Mosaic Promise, I do believe.
Tell us about the beer.
Rubaeus is a 5.7% raspberry beer. We like to say raspberry beer. We don't like to say raspberry wheat beer because the only thing you taste is raspberries.
Okay.
And then Mosaic Promise is a 5.5% pale ale, single hop with Mosaic hops, and the majority of the base or a majority of the malt bill is Golden Promise.
Okay. Excellent. If there's any left in any of those pitchers, volunteers, we're still up here. Thirsty. Yeah, we're so thirsty. My mouth is dry.
So thirsty.
All right, let me ask this. I'm going to assume, and I might be assuming wrong, but you have a new influx of resources, right? So are there any new projects on the horizon for any of you in terms of, and I want to know about beer, not just like tanks.
I want to say something.
I want a new
else,
beer.
too. One of the things I really definitely think that needs to be discussed is in some situations having these new resources in certain partnerships, we'll say, with say a certain macrobreweries. Through conversations and media events that I've attended in the past, it definitely has it changes, I think, your relationship with other people in what we consider the craft industry. And when I say that, I'm talking about you kind of get looked at like you're kind of dirty, like you're pig pen or something. You need to wash your skin and you'll never be able to wash it clean. And the way they look at you basically is that since you have access to these resources at such a low margin based upon volume, which you'll never be able to obtain as just a craft brewery alone, they don't see you as being on the same playing field as them. And from that perspective, basically, you'll still get the same respect. You'll still get the, hey, how's it going, Fred? But you're not going to be the person that might be brewing the next collaboration with him.
Okay. So that's interesting. And so as a consumer, part of that to me is we've been told this story the whole time we've been into craft beer. And the story is we're the little guy. It's us against them. They have all the resources. We don't. Okay, and now that that's changing, how does the story change? Right? And so I'm not saying this is a bad story. I just don't, sometimes as a consumer, I don't know what the story is anymore.
Well, I feel that people should look at it as an opportunity. We're in a partnership where we have gained a lot of technical knowledge, and we're now available with that knowledge to help anybody else who wants it. Okay. I don't know. Most people here probably don't know who Mao San Miguel is. It's a 100-year-old family-owned brewery. So that was the largest decision in why we decided to partner with them. They have very similar views that we do, and they completely understood our views in our family, and they respect that, and it's mutual. When they come and visit, when we have board meetings and their board members come over and visit us, it's all hugs and high fives, and same for us going over there. Right now we have their director of engineering over learning why the hell we're dry hopping, and I mean, we have...
That's got to be cool.
Yeah, I mean, we have different things in place, like flow scales in certain places, and he goes, oh, we really need to do that. I mean, they're going to start replacing things in their brewery because of stuff we do. Yeah. So, I mean, it goes both ways. There's eye-opening experiences for both companies, and it's a good opportunity for us to educate everybody else out there if they want to listen, or if anybody wants to ask questions. We have now more knowledge that we are more than willing to share.
Well, here's something I don't envy you guys for. In the rest of the business world and in the corporate world, when this stuff happens, we can go ask questions, but it's really none of our business, right? In the beer world, we treat you more like our favorite band. We love you guys, and we always have. We're beer fans, so we sort of feel entitled to know like what happened. And I don't envy you guys for that, because some of it is none of our goddamn business, like how it works. But that's not the relationship that we've built together. Like as small craft brewers, you've built a more personal relationship with us. And so Yeah, I don't envy that you have to sit around with us like on the internet making all our stupid comments about what just happened and where's our beer going to go.
Yeah, but you trusted me to make your beer all these years, and you drank it. You should trust me on this one, man.
Yeah, you're right.
Trust me. It's
Our
gonna be
love
cool.
is fickle, Matt. Right? Like, I know you experienced that. You're like, you trust me all these years, and now all of a sudden I'm the guy who's sold out. I'm still making Pivo pills, man. And seriously, I don't envy you guys for that. That's a hard position. But it is it's the nature of the relationship between, beer fans and craft beer. Before I ask the next question, I just have to clarify. Do any of you not fall under the definition, the Brewers Association definition of craft beer now?
We do not.
You do not. And so I'm wondering, and I've heard, Tony from Lagunitas talk about this. I'm wondering if the word craft beer, the phrase, means anything anymore, to you, or if we have to redefine this stuff. And let me just preface it by this. To me, craft beer is still people that I know making beer with their hands. Like, I can know the name of the person that makes it. That's always been my definition of craft beer. I never really cared about the Brewers Association definition, which is something like 100 million barrels or something.
6 million. Anything under 6 million.
So it's 100 million. 6 million, thank you. None of that means anything to me if I still know the name of the person who makes the beer, right? But I just wonder if it means any, if there's a difference now for you guys.
I feel like we've always had the feeling of craft beer is about who's making the beer and their passion about the beer and the process that they're going through with the other group of people that are around them to get the product that we want to be as good as possible out to everybody to share. Because, I mean, this would have never happened if it wasn't for everybody sitting out here. Yeah. And it's still about everybody sitting out there. We have the mantra of brewed for us, and it's still brewed for us. We like to listen to everybody and go, okay, everybody's making these beers, we're going to do this. But, we just have more. We still have the same opportunities to make the same crazy beers that we always want to make, and now we have more opportunities to get them to more people in Europe now. So that's
okay. All right. If anybody has questions, we got a microphone right up here. You can just come line up. I'll notice you eventually, right up in the middle. Come on over.
I want to say something. I think one of the most important things about mergers and acquisitions is you're going to produce more of a product. That's kind of the goal. So if you're going to produce more of a product, the biggest thing that's at stake is your product true to brand? Is your product true to brand across all production facilities? And I think that that's the most important thing to be able to pay a vast amount of attention to and put a vast amount of energy into. I think it's the most important thing with these transitions, because at the end of the day, the merger is going to give us more resources, as Justin says. So if we're going to use them, it doesn't mean a damn thing if I make High in Longmont or if I make High in Brevard, and then when you drink it, it doesn't taste like High that's made in Tampa. So I think outside of all of this that we're talking about, it's the most crucial thing. Hands down crucial. I can't think of another thing that's more crucial. The only worst thing that could happen is they just come in and gut the company and say, you know what, we bought the name, we don't give a damn about what you do or who you are. We have your name, we're going to make your product, and we'll make it our way. And that's another scary thing, but making the product true to brand is very important.
That's a good point. All right, we got a question right here.
My name is Jim Varell, Paste Magazine in Atlanta. You just basically said that if you know the name of the brewer and you know he's a good guy, then it's craft beer. It's not inconceivable that you would know the name of the Anheuser-Busch brewer and that he would be a wonderful human being who works for Anheuser-Busch, who purchases your company and keeps the beer exactly the same, but those dollars are now going toward lobbying towards state representatives to further their agenda and hurt craft beer in, say, the state of Georgia, where I live. what do you think of that?
Yeah, well, for one, you're right. Maybe I dumbed it down a little too much. I tend to do that for the sake of brevity. So you're right, and this is why the Brewers Association, I think, makes some of those standards about the amount of beer that's being made and the amount of money that's being made. But the Brewers Association doesn't list where that money's supposed to go and what it's supposed to do. And maybe what I meant by dumbing it down is if I know the brewer, I guess I mean I know the company culture and I know what they're into. So in the case of Firestone, I know David Walker, I know Matt, and I actually would be hard pressed to believe that you guys were going to spend my dollars, when I buy copious amounts of Pale 31, somewhere that I didn't believe in, and in some like faceless corporate culture. So you make a good point. I dumbed it down a little too much, but so let me be honest with you. One thing I screwed up with this panel in the beginning, I was told I could do this. We originally called this panel the elephant in the room, and I wasn't sure who the brewers were going to be, and I just went nuts with all these questions about like being bought by macro breweries, right? Being bought by these corporations, and I fired off all these questions. I was like, well, if they're going to let me do this, I'm going to go for it. And it got to David Walker, and he came back, and he basically was like, none of us have been bought by macro breweries, you idiot. You're asking the wrong questions. And so if it was that panel, I think we would be having a different discussion. But it turns out that as they've been describing, they've been bought by different types of companies. I do hope that one day I can sit with a brewery or two or three and have the different conversation about macro beer, like Wayne is mentioning, purchasing them, and then what that means to me. Because I might choose to spend my dollars elsewhere. But this is part of why it's cool to talk to these guys, because I feel like in this new age of acquisitions and mergers, this is falling somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, I think you guys might feel that way too, with breweries that are trying to grow and either take on $25 million of debt yourself or let somebody else do it, and then you guys keep making beer, which feels like a no-brainer to me. That's what I would do. All right, the Cigar City beer's out there now, too. Do you want to, yeah.
I was going to say, sometimes you need a partner to take over the world.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a loner. All right, the Cigar City beer's out there. Wayne, what are we drinking?
It looks like it's Helsingborg Bomb. Yep, so Helsingborg Bomb, Marcus from Brewski in Sweden. Helsingborg, Sweden, came over for our event that we do every year, Hunapu's Imperial Stout release. It's in March every year, and it's a dessert mole Imperial Stout. And he came over early enough so that we could brew this beer together, and he makes like a passion fruit Berliner in Helsingborg. So this is a blood orange Berliner that also incorporates a little bit of pink grapefruit, sweet orange peel, and then dry up to slightly with Citra.
Tastes awesome. All right, we got more questions.
Yeah, my name's Eric Grimes. I'm from Paso Robles. My question to you is, I was reading on the internet that the Federal Trade Commission has all but approved the S.A. Miller AB InBev takeover, or AB InBev taking over S.A. Miller. What are your thoughts on that and the aggressiveness that AB InBev has shown in gobbling up craft breweries?
Yeah, absolutely, Wayne.
It scares the hell out of me, quite honestly. And my biggest concern is, and I've been thinking about this for a long time, and usually what you'll see with acquisitions is they might be announced at any point during the year, but they typically, the paperwork doesn't get signed until like July of any given year. And I think it's mostly due to tax purposes. Yeah, it scares the hell out of me because I think there's a lot of things that need to be looked at as far as monopoly and the incentives of their distribution chains. And I think if we're going this route, we need to consider changing some of the legislation as far as state-to-state distribution is concerned, because if we allow them to buy up all the distributors and we allow them to pay incentives to sell only AB products, we really don't have a distribution network that's fair. And I think we definitely need to pay a lot of attention to what's going on as far as that's concerned. That's the thing that worries me most, because what's the worst thing that could happen? You are a brewery that's brewing in we'll pick like a worst case. You're a brewery that's brewing beer in a state that doesn't allow on-premise sales or on-premise sales for off-premise consumption. You sign up with an AB distributor, or you sign with a distributor that somehow is aligned with them in such a way to where they are more focused on AB brands instead of craft brands underneath that umbrella, and you can't move product anymore, right? And you can't move product at a tasting room because it's not legal. You can't sell beer in your own friggin' market where your brewery is. It's like a Jack Daniels situation, kind of, isn't it? Based upon legislation. But and the thing that's even scares me more about it is, yes, there are people that are going to look at that from a legislative aspect, but how many of those people are going to take the money instead of do the right thing? Because we know that's going on as well.
All right, one more.
My name is Victor Tejeda. I'm from Santa Maria, California. My question is, since the merger, does your freedom, has that changed? Can you guys release any beer you want or come up with any creation you want? Or does it have to go through boards and meetings and like, okay, we can release this, or this isn't what the people want? Do you have the same freedom?
In our brewery, actually, it's business as usual. They're not in any way, shape, or form trying to push us to put one beer or another out. In fact, it almost seems like the opposite. It's encouraging us to, like in our case, they're just fascinated with barrel works. And I would have never thought, but I guess after looking at it, Duvel Morgata is really focused on pretty clean, straight-ahead Belgian-style beer, focusing on Belgian Golden Ale. And they don't have a sour program within the mothership program there. So they spent more time with Jim and Jeffers trying to figure out, hey, can Jim and Jeffers come over and do some barrel stuff in Belgium? I'm like, no, they got work to do back at home. So it's actually we're still in that kind of fascination, let's learn from each other phase. And they've been promoting the creativity and wanting to see more of it, because that's what they were lacking in their program, I guess. I mean, they have a beautiful portfolio of beautiful beers, but they weren't doing the quirky things that small, nimble craft brewers were doing.
How about at Founders?
I mean, it's an extremely similar situation. We're getting pretty much zero input from them on what they want us to make. We actually just got some of their main yeast, lager yeast strain in-house recently, so we're extremely excited. We just brewed 2 taproom batches with that this past week, so we're extremely excited to use that. So, I mean, that's one fun resource we have. They have selected yeast strains that they've found over the last 100 years that we have to our arsenal that nobody else can use. And then they're also fascinated with our barreling program. I mean, we'll bring them down so we store, as of right now, all of our bourbon barrels are stored in a gypsum mine under the city of Grand Rapids. So it's probably the most spectacular view you could get, other than standing on a hill and looking at Grand Rapids, is going into a cave and having the light flipped on and seeing 6,000 bourbon barrels. It's pretty cool.
That is very cool.
So they're definitely wanting to get into the bourbon barrel and just barrel aging in general over in Spain. So
Okay. How about you, Wayne? Anything change in the process?
I think that, Matt, it sounds like our experiences are just mirrored. I think it's important when with an acquisition like this to let what works continue operating in the same fashion. Otherwise, why go through a merger and acquisition if you intend to change something? So I think it's very much hands off, and my biggest concerns are beers that are produced at different facilities and maintaining true to brand identity.
When you're a lab guy, are you going to double the size of your lab now that you got some more resources?
Actually, we've expanded our lab quite a bit since the last time we did an interview here, and and every time I brew a collaboration, every time I go to a brewery, the first thing I want to see is a lab, because I think it's the most important room in the entire brewery. And hopefully we'll see more focus on that going forward, because quality is the most important thing outside of true to brand.
Yeah. This is a little off topic, but I went and saw Wayne a couple months ago at Cigar City, and you know this whole like East Coast IPA thing with the cloudy beer shit that's happening, and
Drives me nuts.
right. So I go, and I'd never been to the brewery, and I saw Wayne, and he's like, "Oh man, I've been in the lab all day," and he was worried about this cloudy East Coast IPA bullshit, and so he had taken all of these East Coast IPAs.
Trillium and Treehouse beers, basically. And I took them into the lab. I had 4 of X brand and 2 of X brand, and then took them into the lab, had a tabletop centrifuge, put them into centrifuge containers, spun them until they were clear, decanted them into glasses, then took the samples out of the bottles and cans I had left, poured them into glasses as well as they intended the product to be served, did Century side by side with all of our lab and some more of our employees, and just came to an overall consensus across the board that the beers that were clear were the highest quality beers, and the beers that were turbid were garbage. It was basically taking the most incredible piece of artwork you've ever seen in your entire life and putting dirty fucking like plastic wrap on top of it. It is really sad to me that we've come to this state of affairs in the industry.
You see why I brought this story up, folks? God damn it, I love Wade. He's fantastic. And so I was there that day. He was the same. He was like really passionate about it. He's like, "Oh, dude, every goddamn time the clear one was better. Every time."
Yeah, and Congress Street, amazing beer when you get rid of all of that crap that's in it.
There you go, East Coast. We're talking to you. All right, we're running out of time. If there's any other questions, we can do that. But I just wanted to point out, I want to thank these guys. They're all brewers in the brew house talking about a kind of sensitive subject, and I appreciate them allowing me to abuse you for an hour and talk about this. In the end, the beer does speak for itself. I think the money speaks for itself too, like one of our questions was. And I hope that the growth of craft beer continues in the way that you guys are kind of guiding it. I didn't want this to look like an infomercial for partnerships and stuff. I was concerned about that, and I hope we didn't do that. A little bit of honesty about what's happening, where the money's coming from, and how the beer's staying the same. And I think that's important. So long live craft beer. Thanks to these guys for sticking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.